In Ecuador, the Unitary Workers' Front called for a new day of protest to defend public education and labor rights. Russia reported more than 800,000 patients recovered from coronavirus. The Iranian president warned of consequences of Gulf states normalizing relations with Israel. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. In Ecuador, the Unitary Workers' Front called for a new day of protest to defend public education and labor rights. Workers, students, and social organizations will march in rejection of the neoliberal measures implemented by Lenín Morena's government. The social conglomerate rejects public budget cuts in education and the privatization of companies, among other measures. They also denounced the massive layoffs at the last million public workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, teachers claim that Morena's policies are worsening the crisis in the public education system and that they will keep fighting in defense of the rights to education, health, and work. The National Institute of Observation Haiti has asked the authorities to put an end to the reign of insecurity that claims hundreds of lives each year in the country. Human rights organizations have denounced the murder of numerous personalities, including Montferrier Dorval, who served as president of the Bar Association in Haiti's capital and a professor at the country's main university. Another dozen people have lost their lives due to insecurity since Dorval's death in late August. The organization asked the government to adopt measures to curb criminal activity. The multiplication of homicides, kidnappings, and aggressions provoked a wave of demonstrations, especially in the capital, questioning the government's inaction to stop the phenomenon. In Barbados, Senator Reginald Farley is officially the new president of the Senate. Like most events since March 2020, when the novel coronavirus or COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization, the city was moved to the more spacious convention to accommodate social distancing and other COVID-19 protocols. Senator Farley replaces attorney Sir Richard Cheltenham, who retired from the post.
It is a pleasure, as the President indicated, to be back home in more ways than one. To be back home in Barbados and to be back into this honorable Senate, where I had my first taste of parliamentary experience in September of 1994. I thank you for the warm welcome. I look forward to our new session of hard work. And I would want, with your permission, Mr. President, to thank our hard-working public officials who facilitated and not only my return to Barbados, but all of the attendant arrangements.
The Colombian left-wing senator from Polo Democrático Alternativo, Iván Cepeda, confirmed that former President Álvaro Uribe is conspiring from his house arrest against the administration of justice in Colombia. On his Twitter account, Cepeda assured that Uribe is carrying out a seditious campaign against the judges in charge of the process and against the civil party in the case of procedural fraud and manipulation of witnesses against him. That campaign consists of personal and institutional defamation, consisting slanders and investigation to violence, the opposition congressman, a victim in this case, noted. Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness said that parliamentarians can help to re-engage voters in the electoral process by improving its own behavior in the House. Holness was responding to a statement from leader of the opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips, at the opening session of Parliament following the Jamaica Labour Party's victory at the polls on September 3rd. Reacting to Dr. Phillips' suggestions for increased civic engagement, he said that what was really needed was during this term the Parliament should promote a strong program of civic education. Holness also urged all members of Parliament to, in carrying out their duties, seek the highest level of dignity and efficiency in public affairs. In Mexico, works to rescue 63 corpses of miners who were trapped 14 years ago in the Pasta de Conchos mine in Santa Rita, Coahuila, will begin. The disaster occurred on February 19, 2006, when several tunnels collapsed in the Nueva Rosita coal mine, operated by Grupo Mexico, the largest company of its kind in the country. Its owner, billionaire Germán Larrea Mota Velasco, is accused by the Union of Miners of doing practically nothing to rescue the remains of the workers, blocking all management in this regard, misrepresenting the facts, hiding the causes of the explosion, and not paying compensation to affected families. After a meeting with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the participants decided to immediately start the rescue of the bodies through the Federal Electricity Commission. And the nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize began this month. Official sources say that until now, the committee has received 318 proposals to receive this recognition. From this total, 211 are for people and 107 for organizations. A broad international group are requesting to the Nobel Committee to give this prestigious award to Cuban Medical Brigade Henry Reeve. From Havana, our correspondent Nayara Tardo has the story.
People from all over the world support the petition to award the Nobel Peace Prize to the Cuban Medical Brigade Henry Reeve for its generous work in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, in spite of the United States campaign to discredit its health missions.
I think they deserve it. I feel they deserve it. The world thanks them, and therefore I think it would be fair for them to receive the Nobel Peace Prize.
This is a campaign based on what Commander Fidel Castro said when on September 9, 2005, he created the Henry Reeve Brigade. This day was also historic because the first batch of Latin American physicians graduated from the Latin American School of Medicine. That extraordinary feat that only a sovereign, independent, socialist country like Cuba, a poor country of the Third World, has been able to do, and thus until today.
Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Cuba has sent medical brigades to more than 60 countries affected by the virus. This week, writers from all over the world that participated in the 30th International Poetry Festival in Medellin, Colombia, also supported this petition.
They've become a symbol of people who are fighting in the world, in countries that are not theirs, in countries where they were not born, but as a magnanimous expression of a new man who is born in Cuba and who has been dedicated to others, which have risked their life for the lives of many people, and that is the symbol we want to see in the world. And we join other thousands of people in the world that support this candidacy.
Meanwhile, the international solidarity movement has expressed its repudiation to Donald Trump's nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize, the president of the country, which is the epicenter of the pandemic in the region, with more than 53,000 cases every day.
When we learned that Donald Trump, President of the United States, had been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, we felt shame. But at the same time, we were not surprised that the person who nominated him is an extreme right-wing representative in the Norwegian parliament, who was already postulated him before. This deputy made this request based on something terrible for us, which is what we call the shame of the century, the so-called deal of the century.
According to many voices around the world, awarding these medical brigades dedication to others in the most dangerous situations is an act of justice and recognition that these doctors deserve.
Nayara Tardo, TeleSUR, La Habana.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Russia on Wednesday reported more than 800,000 patients recovered from coronavirus. 5,800 of them were discharged from hospitals in the last 24 hours, Moscow television informed. The national recovery rate stood at 82%. Russia has accumulated over 1 million COVID-19 cases after detecting 5,607 infections in a day. This was the highest amount of cases reported in a day since June. Such figure exceeded 5,000 cases registered for the 13th consecutive day. This Wednesday, Sweden's Health Minister Lena Hellengren said at the press briefing that developments related to the COVID-19 pandemic in the Nordic nation are encouraging, pointing to a decrease in the transmission of the disease.
In Sweden, our development is still encouraging. The transmission of COVID-19 has continued to decrease, even when we have radically increased our testing. Last week, 142,000 tests for active COVID-19 was carried out, approximately a 50% increase in 2 weeks. The number of patients in intensive care in Sweden have dropped substantially. The spread in elderly care facilities have radically decreased. In the worst week of April, we had 845 new cases of infections at elderly care facilities, and last week we have 17 new cases. The mortality rates have also fallen radically. We do not have excess mortality in Sweden. Our levels are back to normal, and in August it was reported that we have mortality rates below normal figures.
On Wednesday, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, urged EU members to build a stronger health union, promising the Biomedical Research Agency and a global summit. In her first annual State of the European Union address, von der Leyen said the coronavirus pandemic had underlined the need for closer cooperation. The European Commission also proposed cutting emissions in Europe by 55% by 2030 in response to the climate emergency. The proposal is backed by EU biggest economies, France and Germany, as well as big business. Ursula von der Leyen also stated that hopes of a post-Brexit trade deal are feeding in the warned Britain not to unilaterally modify the withdrawal deal.
Le voir nous inspire.
And of the European Commission also warned Turkey not to try to intimidate Greece and Cyprus as tensions over energy reserves in the eastern Mediterranean grow. Von der Leyen said that Turkey was a key partner doing important work in receiving refugees, but stressed that this does not justify attempts to intimidate the neighbors. Turkey, Greece and Cyprus have a tense relationship over energy resources and maritime borders in the region.
And that is what I want to talk about today. Honorable members.
On Wednesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said that the accusations against China's Consulate General in Sydney engaging in infiltration activities are fabrications and malicious slander.
China's diplomatic missions in Australia have always abided by international law and the basic norms of international relations, and throughout have devoted themselves to promote friendly exchanges and practical cooperation between China and Australia in different fields. Some media claim that the Consulate General and its officials are engaged in infiltration activities are pure fabrications and malicious slander. China is strongly dissatisfied and firmly opposes this. We urge some people on the Australian side to discard the Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice, stop politicizing and stigmatizing the normal activities carried out by China's diplomatic missions in Australia, and do not create further troubles and obstacles in the China-Australia relationship.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also congratulated Yoshihide Suga for his re-election as Prime Minister of Japan.
China congratulates Mr. Yoshihide Suga on his election as Prime Minister of Japan. As far as I know, Chinese leaders will also send him congratulatory messages. We have noted that Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has said many times recently that he wants to build stable diplomatic relations with China and other neighboring countries, and we appreciate this.
On Wednesday morning, explosions and the following huge fire ripped through the port area of the Italian city of Ancona in the region of Marches, central Italy, destroying warehouses and heavy vehicles. According to firefighter authorities, no casualties have been reported. The flames created vast mushroom clouds of smoke in the city. Explosions sparked the fire shortly after midnight. The blaze was brought under control by the morning after the intervention of 16 firefighting teams. According to the Italian TV Rai News, warehouses in the area were likely to have stored flammable liquid since there is a company nearby that produces liquid nitrogen, as well as power station and methane plant. The causes of the explosions are yet to be determined. During his weekly audience at the Vatican, Pope Francis launched an appeal to take care of the environment and actively safeguard the planet.
Today, I was reading in the newspaper about the history of these two big glaciers in Antarctica that are about to collapse. It would be terrible because the sea level will rise, and this will cause many difficulties, evil. And why? Because of global warming, for not having taken care of the environment, for not having taken care of the common house.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. This Wednesday, the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani warned of consequences for Gulf states normalizing relations with Israel after Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates formally established full ties with the Jewish state on Tuesday.
Unfortunately, some of the countries in the region whose people are Muslims are pious and on the side of Islam, but their rulers do not understand religion nor depth, and they neither understand the commandments of religions nor their depth to the nation of Palestine. How could you reach out your hands to Israel, and then you want to give them bases in the region? All the severe consequences that would arise from this are on you, as you are the ones doing something illegal against the region's security.
In India, coronavirus infections continue to soar as Indian health authorities confirmed more than 5 million COVID-19 cases and over 82,000 deaths this Wednesday. The Asian nation, home to 1.3 billion people, has reported some of the highest daily case jumps in the world in recent days. The spread of the virus has accelerated in some of the most populated parts of the world, such as India, where the latest million infections were detected over just 11 days. Some experts have warned that the total number of cases could be far higher in the vast nation. Gautam Menon, a physics and biology professor at Ashoka University, said that the surge was inevitable and warned that India will certainly overtake the U.S. in case numbers.
As I said, it's inevitable that this had to happen, unless you manage to clamp down on it very rigorously right at the beginning, which very few countries really have managed to do. I can only think of Taiwan as one example, possibly New Zealand as another example, but with the country of the complexity and scale of India, it's hard to imagine that one would have been able to do that in any rigorous way. And I would think that the way the numbers are going, we will certainly overtake the US. I think there is still a case for doing contact tracing, or at least within a family, within a close group of people you interact with. But it's true that once you have full-blown community transmission, which is the case that you're seeing now in India, however much the government may deny it, it becomes less useful, because to figure out where a case came from, who infected who, becomes a much more complicated question.
And Israel bombed the Gaza Strip, leaving at least 14 people injured during the early morning of this Wednesday. Israeli army attacked with continuous artillery for hours. They claim that the targets of their attacks are the Hamas operation centers, but the Gaza's human rights organizations said that many residential neighborhoods were being affected by the blasts. On Wednesday, Afghan women marched in the city of Jalalabad, calling for a permanent ceasefire between the Taliban and the Afghan government as historic talks between the two sides take place in Qatar. The Afghan government on Monday pressed its calls for a truce with the Taliban, reiterating its desire for a long-term ceasefire at historic talks in Qatar. The two sides are in the early stages of meetings in Doha as they try to hammer out the deal. that would bring 19 years of bloodshed in Afghanistan to an end.
There are still many of my relatives killed in this ongoing fighting. Now we want an end of this conflict. We want the Taliban to put down their weapons and join the government. Our situation is so bad. Many women are coming here for demonstrations to call on the Taliban and the government for a ceasefire. We want peace in our country and we want to continue our life and our education in peace, like other countries. We support the peace negotiation between the Taliban and the Afghan government. We're tired of killing our fellow Afghans. We want peace in the country.
Angola reported on Tuesday 130 new COVID-19 cases, having now over 2,000 confirmed patients, most of them asymptomatic. On the usual press briefing, the Secretary of State for Public Health, Franco Mufinda, updated that there were 8 recoveries from COVID-19 and another 3 deaths in the last 24 hours. 2 men aged 61 and 64 respectively and a woman aged 92. The recent cases showed new infections in 5 provinces. The African country currently accumulates 3,500 COVID-19 cases, which includes 139 deaths. And this Wednesday, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador celebrated the traditional Cry of Dolores, the historic moment when the Mexican War of Independence started in 1810. The remembrance happened without an audience due to the pandemic for the first time ever. In what is also called the Independence Day, Mexican people celebrated the 210th anniversary of the beginning of this conflict. With these images, we finish this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.
Como la que va a librar este